Okay. Did everyone hear that message? So we're on the record now. This is the special meeting of the Economic Development Commission on Thursday, May 7th at 9 o'clock. This is Mark Barnhart, the Director of Economic Development. And on the phone with me are Commissioners Don Peterson, Chairman Kevin Lesko, Commissioner Steve Rosado, and our recording secretary, Gretchen Gertner. Has anyone else joined the call?
Beverly is here.
Oh, great. Hey, Beverly, how are you?
Good morning.
And so we also have Beverly Ballard.
Good morning, Beverly.
Ex officio member from the Fairfield Chamber of Commerce. So, Kevin, I'll turn things over to you briefly, and then I'm sure you'll ask me to report on a few matters.
Hi, Mark. It's Elise Fatherly. I'm here.
Oh, how you doing, Elise?
Oh, excellent. Hi. Very good. Does that make a quorum for us?
It does.
3, 4. Yeah, it does. Okay. Very good. Well, we still don't necessarily have to have an official meeting, but I will call the meeting to order at this time and welcome each of you. I'm certainly hoping that health is in all of your homes at this time, at this very complicated time of our lives. I'm glad we have an opportunity to at least have a teleconference and start touching base. While we have not had meetings, Mark Barnhart has been working tirelessly to be prepared for what will be a restart, new norms that we can minimize our negative impact from this coronavirus and our town financially. With all that said, I'm going to step back and ask Mark to step forward because he has a few things to talk about.
Thanks, Kevin. So first, order of business, we will officially defer consideration of the minutes from our March meeting, as I neglected to send a copy of those out, and plus this is a special meeting, so we really should wait for the next regularly scheduled meeting to consider and approve those minutes. So we'll do that hopefully in June. I wanted to provide the Commission with an update on where we are with regard to the response to the pandemic and public health emergency and what we anticipate in terms of the economic impact, which obviously all of you have been, I'm sure, mindful of what's taking place across the country and across the globe, and news reports as to the impact on businesses, not just here but everywhere else, responding to the lockdown and orders and need for social distancing and the like. We are looking forward to a May 20th partial reopening that affects salons. I know, speaking for myself, I'm anxious to get myself a haircut at some point in the near future. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. It also impacts other quote-unquote non-essential retail, restaurants as well, but limited only to outdoor dining. We have requested and are anticipating further guidance from the governor's office as to a timeline as it relates to other businesses and further guidance as to how those businesses should safely operate. As you might imagine, we're getting a lot of calls from restaurants, salon operators, retailers, and the like. I know Beverly has received those calls as well. In light of the current situation, businesses, of course, want to know how they can safely operate to be protective of public safety, their health, the health of their employees, and the health of their customers. So we are expecting to receive that guidance hopefully Friday. That was communicated to us in a call last evening. The First Select Woman has assembled a task force, and we've met a couple times, mostly remotely. At least for myself and Beverly, we've called in as it relates to restarting aspects of the economy, particularly as it relates to restaurants and this limitation to outdoor dining. The direction we've received from the First Selectwoman is to do all that we can to facilitate and expedite any permitting necessary at the local level to allow restaurants to reopen for outdoor dining. As you know, we have a fairly robust outdoor dining scene to begin with. Many restaurants already have outdoor dining spaces that have been approved, but we've been instructed and have invited restaurants to contact us if they have plans to expand upon those existing footprints or to create new areas that haven't previously been permitted. And we're looking to do that under the First Selectwoman's emergency powers to do that administratively through a simple sign-off at through the Town Planning and Zoning Department to the extent to which it necessitates erecting a temporary structure or a tent or something like that. Obviously, they would need to secure any applicable building and fire marshal permits, but again, we're attempting to ease the regulatory burden. We're going to waive all application and permit fees in connection with that, and we're looking to assemble a group that will meet regularly to review those applications so that applicants, restaurant operators, and their vendors don't need to wait unnecessarily to get the necessary local approvals. There is a little fly in the ointment, as there usually is. I anticipate most of these restaurants will want to have liquor service at those outdoor dining locations, and to the extent to which it requires or they're looking to expand upon or create new ones, it will require a separate application to the Liquor Control Commission. They'll need to get local sign-offs before proceeding to the state, and there is some question as to how that process will all work, and whether or not the Liquor Control Commission is in a position to approve these more remote or more creative applications of the outdoor dining facilities. So we've asked the question of the state. Hopefully we'll get some further guidance Friday, but that question has arisen. So we'll do all that we can at the local level to make sure it is as quick and as painless a process as we can make it to allow some restaurants or those restaurants that want to have an expanded or new outdoor dining facility to do so in the near future. We don't know what the next phase may be when those restaurants may be allowed to reopen for in-person dining. And again, we're hopeful that we'll get some further direction from the state as to what their anticipated timeline might be, because that may inform some businesses' decision as to whether or not it makes sense to invest the human and other capital necessary to create these outdoor dining facilities. We do have a call scheduled much like this tomorrow with restaurant operators to outline the process and how they can go about securing local approvals. We've invited restaurants to contact TPNZ as our initial point of contact to at least start discussion. Some of these locations may involve taking parking spaces or areas that have been used for landscape buffers or parking lots, and so they'll need to be reviewed with that in mind. But I don't anticipate any land use or zoning questions as it relates to that, because there's no real parking impact, because they're operating at much less capacity than otherwise permitted. We will hopefully have. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry if I can just ask a question and stop me if you're going to get to it.
No.
But how about from the health department side of it? Many of these kitchens are shoulder to shoulder, and has that been addressed?
Yeah, the restaurants that are currently operating in takeout and delivery or curbside pickup mode, the back of the shop, so to speak. They've been able to do so with appropriate protective measures in place for the restaurant workers. I think so far that has not been an issue. There are some issues. Typically, when you have a restaurant, you need to provide the public access to restrooms, facilities. Obviously, in this day and age, you want people to practice good hygiene, wash their hands, and things like that. So that typically involves people accessing portions of the building, physical building that otherwise would be closed. So again, those are some of the questions we've posed to the state. I would anticipate that that access will be permitted for that limited purpose because you can access now to pick up food in some locations. But again, there's some details that still need to be worked out. But the health department is part of this conversation, and so far we haven't really identified any major hurdles to allow restaurants to do this. We will have hopefully other calls scheduled with, or we're planning other calls with the salon, nail and hair salon, barbershops, other operators next week. Again, we've been holding off a little bit in hopes that we might get some additional guidance from the state as to, again, how these salons should operate. And I think the biggest issue that we've heard from salons and from retailers is in terms of the sourcing and procuring of protective equipment, whether that's masks or gloves or things of that nature. And the town is looking to bulk purchase, do some bulk purchasing, and make that available either at cost or to some limited supply, maybe gratuitously to those business establishments. So I know we already did with the state, number of businesses, over 170 businesses did receive limited supply of masks through the state and the Concept program. I think over 5,400 masks were delivered to local businesses as part of that initial offering. So there is some of the supply chain issues are getting better. They're not ideal, but we still get questions in terms of where people can procure reliable sources of PPE. But it's a lot better than what it was a month ago. So hopefully, again, we can continue to play a role in terms of helping ease that burden to local businesses. One other thing I do want to mention with retail is we're intending, with the support of the Chamber of Commerce, running a virtual shopping event this Saturday, May 9th, from 12 to 4. We have over 24 retail establishments throughout town that will be participating, offering virtual window shopping, promoting their seasonal collections online through social media, and taking and fulfilling orders either electronically or by phone, and offering curbside pickup or some local delivery options. So, again, what we can do to help businesses through this very difficult time, we're trying to do that, trying to be creative. Beverly Ballas from the Chamber is also monitoring how other chambers and communities are responding, and has some additional ideas as to how we can help support the local retail community. And so we'll hopefully do that, because it does look like we're going to be in this new reality for some time. And that has obvious implications for all of us, but obviously small businesses. I'll pause here. I don't know if there are any questions in terms of the partial reopening and how it affects retail and restaurant community, but I did want to report back too on a couple of other, the business survey we did, as well as what we're seeing in terms of space availability. But if there's questions or comments now.
Mark,
Beverly.
Did you send an email out to the businesses, the restaurant businesses,
We did.
You did. Okay, I don't know that if I saw that. So I can overlay and send it out to our restaurant members as well, just to make sure everyone gets it.
I apologize if I omitted you. I'll make sure that I send that to you.
Okay.
I noticed I left. I think I left the health department off too.
All right. So I just want to make sure everyone gets it, and I might touch base with a few of them via phone today. So that would be great.
Yeah, actually, the other thing I had suggested, I didn't get a response because I know Sam's is busy, but as the permitting authority or licensing authority for many of these establishments, I suggested he send out a follow-up email reminder because his list is probably even more comprehensive than either one of ours. Just because, I have about 100 restaurants on my list. Those are predominantly sit-down, locally owned and operated restaurants. Obviously, none of the chains. But I know his is comprehensive in that it includes everyone. So I just want to make sure everyone's mindful of this upcoming call. So I'll send that over to you.
All right. Thank you.
Beverly, did you have any other insight that you'd like to share? I'm sure that people have been reaching out to you, and I'm quite curious.
Well, we went through the whole wave of money. Initially, I think we're in week 7. Initially, the first 2 to 3 weeks were how do I get it, where do I go, and how do I process? And then the next wave was really how can I track, where is my money, and how long do we have to wait? So those were the kind of calls that we were getting. I think everyone is kind of settled now. There's a few questions coming in with regard to access to additional funds or PPP, but we've gotten through all of that, and that was a lot of the calls that came in. I think right now, as Mark is saying, we're at a point now, how do we start the recovery process, and what will that look like? It's going to be, I think, enormously detailed on both for retail and restaurants, as Mark's been working on and looking at some what the task force is saying. So everyone just is so anxious to open their doors right now. For the PPP, have you had anyone that still has been trying and has not been successful about their application process? I have not heard that. I met with one of my members yesterday, and he hadn't applied because he thought that there was a required personal guarantee attached to it. But that has been changed, so he'll process that. But no, I haven't. I have heard that people have received their advanced $1,000 per employee money from the EIDL SBA loan, but no follow-up after that for what the overall loan will look like. But folks have received that advanced money.
And it should be noted the economic injury disaster loan process, despite the fact that it was recapitalized, they've still not accepting new applications. They're working through the backlog of applications that they had received. They did, I apologize, they did open it up to new applications from agricultural businesses, of all things, of which, that's not particularly helpful for Fairfield. But for the most part, I think, again, what we're hearing back from a lot of businesses I've talked to is that they're being able to close on the PPP loans. This is restaurants in particular. We did do a survey with the help of the Chamber of Commerce. We did receive roughly 300 responses to that survey. 94% of the respondents reported some business loss in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic. 68% of those business respondents reported no or slower sales. 58% reported a decline in sales income by greater than 50%. and almost 30% reported revenue declines of more than 90%. Obviously, there were high levels of anxiety, or as you would anticipate, concern, which really didn't dissipate over the 3 to 6 month span that we asked the question. We asked whether or not, what's their level of concern for their business operations in the next month, 3 months, and 6 months, and it stayed pretty consistent. There were high levels of concern as it relates to the business operations given the lack of certainty out there. 37% of the respondents that responded to our survey were concerned that their business may be forced to close within the next few months as a result of this. But the good news, I guess, if there is one, is that while 30% of the businesses had suspended operations, less than 2% or four businesses reported that they had already made the decision to close permanently and not reopen. So we are starting to see some of those businesses pull the plug, so to speak. Obviously, that's distressing. We'd hope to keep those numbers down. To your point, Kevin, we did ask the question about what financial assistance they had received or applied for. And again, of the businesses that responded to our survey, 70% had applied for the PPP program. But at the time we asked the question, and this was several weeks back, only 10% reported that they had closed and received funds, while another 40% were waiting in line. They had successfully submitted an application but hadn't closed yet. And based, again, on our going back to those businesses and talking to them individually, it seems that many of those now are starting to see the funds flow into their bank accounts. So that was the business survey that and it was a pretty good mix of businesses that did respond to the survey. It wasn't weighted in any particular area. We had manufacturers. 17% were in personal services, which includes the salons. 16% were restaurant, food service establishments. 11% were in professional services or office-type locations, and 11% were in retail trade. So it was a pretty diverse group. But again, this
Mark,
will be helpful. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Don. What was the population? You said some 300 responded. How many were sent out, and what percentage of the total number of businesses in Fairfield actually are on that list?
Yeah, I think we sent out between, and there is some overlap on our list. I know Beverly sent it out to her membership, which is roughly, 400, Beverly, or 350?
About 330.
330. And we were roughly 750. So there's probably overlap there. So I would say, 800 or so businesses or 900 or so businesses probably received an email invitation. It did also go in Brenda's newsletter. So in terms of the total, we probably have roughly 2,000 or so businesses in town. So we might have reached about, a little less than half, 40%.
Still a fair number as a.
I was pleased with the response. I mean, if you looked at, I think the state issued a survey just recently, statewide, and they received 1,800 responses.
Right.
So again, it's a snapshot, and their numbers, which was just done recently, are not all that different than ours. They had 24% of their businesses that responded indicating they had temporarily closed, where we were a little higher at 30%. 71% of their businesses expressed, the biggest issue that they saw was cash flow for their business. Our response was 70%. So again, we saw very similar numbers to what the state received, but I was pretty happy with our response level.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, do you have a sense of what percentage of the businesses their locations are on lease or leased property, or how many are owned by the owners?
Yeah. We did ask that question. Of the ones that responded, 70% of the business that responded lease or rent their facility. 63% of those business had requested some type of relief from their landlord, and roughly a third, or 35%, reported that they had received some concessions. So, that's an ongoing issue. I know Beverly's gotten those calls, as have I. It runs the gamut. So we have some property owners that have been very accommodating, have waived rent or deferred rent without too much hassle, and we have others that are very insistent. Rent's due, pay it, and haven't made any effort to accommodate or to provide any concessions to their tenants. As I've explained to some of the tenants, it's not always. There's two sides to the coin. So we have some property owners or landlords. That decision rests solely with them. They don't have a mortgage on the property. They don't have any lenders to deal with. They don't have any business partners to deal with. You have others where they may be a minority stake in the ownership structure. It may be owned by a real estate trust. There may be lenders that they have to negotiate with in terms of those concessions. So it's not totally a landlord, being just intransigent. There are some of those out there for sure, but there are other circumstances that people need to be mindful of.
I suspect as time goes on that there'll be a little more easing as well with some of the concessions if they really feel that there's a tenant that they want to keep.
Yeah. I will say we just did complete our commercial space availability survey. We would anticipate, to Don's point, that we'll start to see some uptick in retail vacancy. And for the second quarter, for the quarter that we just did at April 30th, we did see an increase in retail space available. We're presently at about 16% retail vacancy, up from roughly 13% the month before. A couple spaces coming online or becoming available. But on the positive side, there are transactions that continue to be done. 1530 Post Road, where Magic Beans was located, was recently leased to an apparel company. So there are. It's important to remember that there are businesses that are out there that are.
Another call.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Sorry.
All right, sorry about that.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. All right.
Bye now.
Stay safe, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you, Steve. So there are businesses that are seeing this as an opportunity. I had a conversation with an entrepreneur yesterday who was looking similarly to establish a small clothing apparel company here in Fairfield, retail store front in Fairfield. So it's while other people obviously see the devastation wrought by the public health emergency, there are other businesses that are looking at this as an opportunity to perhaps gain a foothold. So it's good to look at the total picture here.
Yeah, certainly there'll be winners and losers to this circumstance as well. Mark, have you had any discussion with first select person Brenda about maybe creating some type of program or relief for tenants in conjunction with the landlords?
Yes. So, one of the reasons why we did this survey was to look at to what extent is the existing federal and state programs assisting businesses here in town. And I think many of the businesses are benefiting from the existing, or at least able to take advantage of those programs. But there is a subset that we find where they're not able to access, and that's really heartbreaking. I know I've had those conversations, and Beverly has as well. In a lot of cases, these are self-employed individuals or folks that have very small businesses where their options really are to file for unemployment, and that's been a total mess for these individuals. So one of the things we're looking at, as you may know, under the CARES Act that was signed into law in end of March, states and municipalities are getting some additional funding from the federal government. In our case, as an entitlement community under the Community Development Block Grant Program, we're expecting to receive another $300,000 in supplemental funding that we can use to meet, still have to meet a national objective under the CDBG program and be eligible. But one of the eligible activities is to provide, for some small grants or direct financial assistance to impacted businesses. And so we were looking at using a good portion of those monies to provide an expansion of our existing microenterprise program, provide small micro grants to these small businesses that have not been assisted to date by these federal and state programs. And so I think if we could leverage that with concessions from the landlords, so it's not just going to cover rent, and it's not really helping the business get back onto solid footing, or to see if we might be able to raise some private capital to match what's coming from the federal government, I think that would be great. Our timeline right now is, as we just did a notice of funding availability to our grant recipients, those that are organizations that are eligible for CDBG funding, and we'll need to, we're having a public hearing kind of like this on May 18th to consider those applications received in our proposed allocation plan. I'm meeting with Brenda to discuss that this afternoon, and then we would have to get through both the Board of Selectmen and RTM before we can actually put that money out into the community. But I'm trying to move that process along as fast as I can. We're not alone in terms of thinking about using that CDBG money to help small businesses. So I think this is helpful.
Is there any indication that the town might also contribute some funds towards this pool of money?
I don't know that yet. I do know that there are, I have not been outside of my initial Board of Finance meeting. I haven't sat through many of the other budget discussions. I know there's a lot of conversation about the impact that this pandemic is having on municipal operations, in terms of, in some areas we're seeing increased costs that have to be met, and also at the same time seeing while much of our revenues come from property taxes, there was a move to defer those, and so at least on a cash flow basis there's some concern about meeting our cash flow requirements short term. So I'm not sure what the appetite is for additional appropriations.
Right.
Mark, do you get any information or insights, either anecdotally or from the state, as to what percentage of people in Fairfield are filing for unemployment, and how many people are out of work? And because I'm thinking that if you can, even though you reopen a lot of things like restaurants and so on, it's a big percentage of the residents are hurting financially. That's going to slow down the business recovery?
Yeah, I agree, and I did receive that. I don't have it in front of me, but
it started.
You can actually. What's that? Yeah, you can actually access that information. Because I'm getting I don't know why this is recording secondly, but everyone can still hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear
I can still hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. I was getting feedback for some reason, but you can access that information from Connecticut Department of Labor. They have it by individual town, and Jackie Bertolone, the chief of staff, did forward some information from that website to me. I'll provide the link to you guys because it is eye-opening. It's not obviously it's not limited to Fairfield, but it is something we need to be mindful of. We did create that relief committee. We actually have our first working session this afternoon. Thus far, I've raised over $50,000 in donations, but we're seeing a lot of demand to meet basic needs, whether it's housing or food or things like that.
Are you referring to the COVID-19 funding that
relief
is relief fund that's through Operation Hope's 501c3?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a town operation in that.
Yes.
But obviously we're using Operation Hope created the fund so that people that make contributions can get a tax write-off associated with it.
Yes, of course. Very good. Mark, do you want to give us any update on any other key development or sites that are taking place at this time?
Yeah, I'll just very briefly. I'm sure I don't know if any of you were able to attend or not attend, but listen in on the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that was held in April. But the Fairfield Metro Center project was approved with conditions. None of those, I don't think, are particularly onerous or would preclude the developer from moving forward. They did increase the amount of the affordable set-aside from 10% to 12%, and did have a phasing plan so that it truly is a mixed-use project, so that they just can't build out the residential piece without doing the commercial elements of the project. So that was approved. I don't have a timetable as to when they might anticipate, pulling a building permit and breaking ground. Even under the best of circumstances, there's typically 6 months to get their construction plans in order and get through the permitting and line up their financing or construction crews to do the work. So, at the earliest, it's 6 months from now, but who knows what the impact of this situation is. From all indications, they had intended to go forward with the first phase. So I'm anticipating that once they get through the construction drawings, they'll proceed. And then Exide is the other project of note, and they were on track to close this month on that site.
Okay. Back to the Metro Center area. How is the project for the sewer improvement coming along, and will that have any impact on the timing of the Metro project?
Hopefully not. It still is. It's still, we had secured a grant, as you know, for some piece of the overall construction costs. Those construction estimates have gone through the roof, and they had to seek additional monies for the project. We haven't finalized it, but I'm not anticipating that it will negatively impact their timetable at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm wondering if a rebidding process would be in the interest of the town at this point.
I don't know. I would certainly look into it.
Interesting. Okay. Is any other business at this time?
None from me, and I apologize for whatever interference we're getting on the phone. I don't know if any of you could hear that, but hopefully,
yes.
Sorry about that. We're all learning. Elise, you have a question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, does anyone have any other comments that they'd like to share at this time?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
I just don't know if anyone can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, no, I just wanted to say that I've been on several calls with the Women's Business Council, and they were really very helpful with helping small businesses, guiding them through the process of applying for the PPP loans and the disaster recovery loans. So I just wanted to say that because there were several small businesses on the call that they just really needed the guidance and just to help navigate what to do and where to start. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been a great resource.
Yeah.
I might add, I know, Mark, you spoke about new applications and that they're not necessarily taking them. I actually did have a conversation with a banker last night on the topic came up. Their bank actually is accepting new applications at this time.
The PPP is open. The PPP is open, not the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program.
Oh, yes.
Unless you're agricultural.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. That's.
So if you know of anyone that hasn't applied yet for the PPP, get your application in. So. Yeah,
it's and not to push it on the small banks, but they seem to be the ones that are processing pretty decently with the PPP. So, well,
I think
yes,
yeah, I agree with that. Yep.
So if there are no other points for conversation, I'll make a motion to close. May I ask for a motion to close?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Mark, thank you so much for making this happen. I think it was very helpful for each of us. I would certainly encourage us doing this again if and when additional information comes out that we can further discuss. And you've been really terrific about keeping us informed. You are such an asset, and we greatly appreciate you. Beverly, same holds true. You have been such a supportive person to our business environment in town. So thank you from each of us. I wish all of you continued health, and I look forward to the time that we can actually sit in front of each other and see each other's smiles again.
Absolutely.
Me too. Same. Well, thank you all. I'm going to stop our recording now. So.
Yes. Okay. Goodbye.